What do you do when you're dealing with the side effects of prednisone that affect your mood? How do you deal with roid rage? What do you do when the medicine makes you so depressed you don't want to get out of bed? That's what we're going to cover today. We're going to talk about how to cope with the psychiatric side effects of prednisone. So, first of all, we'll talk about the non-prescription strategies, things you can do without getting a prescription from your doctor. Next, we'll talk about examples that worked for me of those non-prescription methods. And finally, we'll conclude with what you can ask your doctor about getting as far as prescription options. And this is based on not only my own experience as a prednisone patient, but also these articles, medical reviews, and my expertise as a pharmacist. And if you haven't already caught last week's episode, we did the prequel to this. This is the second episode about psychiatric side effects. So if you're curious about any of the side effects I'm about to talk about, if you check out last week's, then you will understand more of what we're talking about. Okay. So what happens when your prescription for prednisone makes you feel so crazy you want to jump off a bridge or run off across a busy street or spend all your money or some other really bad side effect that is really worse than the reason you're taking prednisone? So when we talk about prednisone, it's always a risk versus a benefit. The risk being the side effects and the benefit being your disease being under control. So if you're taking it for something that is just to make you feel better and not necessarily life or death, then when you have a really bad side effect, it's not worth it anymore. But if you're taking prednisone because your kidneys are going to fail, or for me, I could have bled to death, then it might be worth it. And so we'll have to talk through different scenarios. So this scenario, the first scenario we're talking about is if there's any other possible treatment we could use that would keep you alive, then if you have a bad enough psychiatric side effect, then the goal is to stop taking prednisone and to slowly taper it and to be watched while you're tapering, to not ever go cold turkey. And if that doesn't work, then decreasing the dose. So for example, if you're on 40 milligrams, going down to 20 milligrams. Then the second line options are these non-prescription coping strategies and then prescription coping strategies. So this is the same chart I showed you last week. Each of these little dots is a psychiatric symptom that you might feel. So first of all, we'll talk about mood lability. And a non-prescription way to cope with this, and pretty much any other of these, is meditation. It can help no matter which of these symptoms you're experiencing. Meditation is a practice, so it's something that you have to do every day, and you get better as time goes on. I'll talk about that more in detail in a little bit. Anxiety. So if prednisone is giving you anxiety, which is pretty common, you can learn breathing techniques. One that I learned that I found really helpful is called the 4-6-7, where you breathe in on 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, hold it for 6, 1, 2, 5, 6, and then out for 7, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then you repeat. In, hold, out. In, hold, out. And then there's the box technique, which is in for, hold it for 4, out for 4, hold it for 4. In for 4, and you just draw a box with your fingers. And it distracts your brain from thinking about whatever you are anxious about, and it calms your heart rate, and this is great to use with kids too, because it gives them something else to focus on. Insomnia. So this is also quite common. The number one complaint that people tweet about when it comes to prednisone is insomnia. So if you're experiencing restless sleep, then it's pretty common. Don't feel alone. One thing that really helped me was improving my bedtime routine. And one definite big change I made was no screen time before bedtime, because that prednisone brain would just go through whatever I had just seen online, whether it was politics or a friend from high school or some random recipe, and it would just go round and around and around in my brain all night long. And so I learned I had to stop using my screens at least 2 hours before bedtime, and that really helped calm my brain down. And then I've done another episode about this. It was one of the first ones I did about sleep, so you should check that out, and it's in depth with some really good tips. Okay, depression. So depression is more common at higher doses and when you've been on it a longer time. And one of the most helpful things for depression is exercise. And if you're taking prednisone for a joint problem or a breathing problem, then I can understand how exercise is definitely going to be a challenge. But there are exercises for every level of ability, for every impairment level. And I encourage you to find one that works for you. I really am loving the 7 app doing high intensity interval training. So I use that all the time. It's free. You do 7 minutes of workout and you're done. And I feel so good after. Okay, memory. A lot of people get brain fog or even dementia when they're taking prednisone. And so doing puzzles and doing as much active things with your brain as possible. Writing, reading, just focusing as much as you possibly can. Mania. So if you're getting this, like I got probably hypomania when I started prednisone. I just had like a ton of energy. I could just go. So if you have that, try to tell yourself to focus it. To focus that energy to do good things like meal prepping, like going grocery shopping for healthy foods so that your food in your house is good for eating when you get that prednisone binging. So the last time I was on a prednisone drug, I prepped like for 4 hours and I had tons of delicious great food to eat. So I'd highly encourage you to use that if you get that. Psychosis. So people literally feel crazy. Electroconvulsive therapy can help, but that technically is a prescription. So these are some things that I found helpful. For anxiety and insomnia, doing meditation. So there's an app called the Calm app. I believe there's also one called Headspace. And these would get me through some rough nights. So if it was 2:00 in the morning and I was like, my eyes won't shut, my brain won't turn off, what am I going to do? I would put in a little earbud and I would listen to a calm meditation, sleep story, whatever. Another thing I would do is listen to scriptures on the audio, just things that would help me turn off my brain and think about something more calming. It was really helpful for me. Okay, so relationships are definitely affected by your prednisone mood changes. You might feel like a different person. Your family members might feel like, where did mom go? What happened to dad? Like, why isn't he acting the same as he used to? Or why isn't mom as nice as she used to? Why can't mom get off the couch? Right? So we have to help our families know that this is the drug and not us. I know it's hard for everybody to remember when it's the heat of the moment. Some things as far as parenting that helped me there's a lot of really good parenting books out there. And then I was actually taking this AHA parenting course while I was on prednisone, and it really helped me to not yell at my kids. We'll just leave it like that. To really connect, to make connections with my children. And so I really recommend that. then as far as marriage, there are some really good marriage books. John Gottman is probably like the foremost marriage expert in the world. And he wrote this book that I think everyone should read. It's relevant whether you're married or not. Whatever relationships you're in, this one, it just tells you what not to do and what to do and really makes it doable. So the 7 principles for making marriage work. One of the important principles in here is the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse / of like predicting divorce: criticism, defensiveness, contempt, and stonewalling. And I understand when on prednisone how easy it is to default to these options, but we need to find alternatives. And so in the blue, you can see the terms that they use in this book. And so if those terms don't make sense to you, you definitely need to read that book. It's really good. And I love the bottom one. It's do physiological self-soothing. So just breathing deeply and turning down that hyper reactive state that we're in when we're on prednisone. Just doing anything you can to slow it down, to relax, just to breathe. And you cannot be in that reactive state and blocking the people that you need in your life to care for you. So check that book out. Okay. Back to this little chart of our main psychological symptoms. So first of all, mood lability. So that going up and down with your moods. You can do talk therapy. And if your mood lability gets so bad that it turns into delirium, some drugs called haloperidol is the first generation antipsychotic. And then atypical antipsychotics, new ones like Abilify or Zyprexa. Those ones can help. Anxiety. So there are a lot of medicines that can help with anxiety. Some things like Zoloft and Prozac and Wellbutrin. And then if you need something that's shorter acting and you don't get the anxiety all the time, it's just once in a while, then you could do something like Xanax. But that's more addictive and you don't necessarily want to get on something addictive. Insomnia. So first line therapy for most people who have insomnia would be to take melatonin. And this is especially helpful when you are taking prednisone because prednisone is interfering with your circadian rhythm, and melatonin is your circadian rhythm maker. And so it's just giving back what prednisone is blocking. And then if that's not enough, and I would start out at 1 to 3 milligrams per day, and you could even go up to 20 milligrams, but I would go really slowly to get to that point. Then Benadryl is an option, over-the-counter diphenhydramine, like Tylenol PM. Those things all have that diphenhydramine in it, and that's it's actually an antihistamine that makes it so you're not feeling allergic, but it can also have the side effect of making you feel drowsy. And so most people this can be helpful in, but some people who shouldn't use it are people who are over 65 or people who've tried it in the past and have the opposite reaction of like being hyper instead of drowsy. And finally, there are sleep medicines like Ambien and Lunesta. Those drugs are really great at helping you fall asleep, not necessarily keeping you asleep unless you get the extended release version. And they are also not very safe in the elderly. So be careful with all of these options. Always do your homework and make sure that it's really right for you. But if you're experiencing these things, sleep is one of the most important ways to heal from anything. And so sleep is important. It might be worth it to take medicine for it. Depression. Okay, so Zoloft is also good for depression. And Prozac and Paxil, all of those drugs are SSRIs. They can help with depression. And then lithium. So this is an ion that can help to stabilize your brain activity. And so it not only helps with depression, like major depression, but it'll help with some of these other side effects coming up. And then one more thing that's not on here, it's called tricyclic antidepressants. And they've been shown to not really be as helpful for this type of prednisone causing depression. So I would stay away from those unless they already work for you. Okay, memory. So if prednisone is interfering with your memory, there are memory medicines like for people who have dementia, like Namenda, and that can be helpful. Then there's this seizure medicine called Lamictal, and it's actually used for a lot more things than just seizures. And so it can help to clear the brain fog and remember a little bit better. And then even this blood pressure medicine called propranolol can help. For mania, when you're high as a kite and buzzing, these are called mood stabilizers. Instead of just having your mood way up high, it just kind of settles your mood down, keeps you more in the normal range. So lithium, that ion, olanzapine, and other atypical antipsychotics like Abilify, and then phenytoin and valproic acid are both seizure medicines, but are also often used to help with mood regulation. So if you're having these problems, it's probably worth it to be on these medicines. All right, psychosis. They used to have a term for all of these called steroid psychosis, and back in the day, a lot of these medicines didn't exist, but prednisone did, and so they didn't have many options. Thankfully, we do now. We have the atypical antipsychotics like Zyprexa and Abilify. We also have lithium and electroconvulsive therapy. So back to our discussion of benefit versus risk. It's always what you absolutely need. What is worth it? So if you're going to die without the prednisone, but the prednisone is causing side effects that are so bad, you might need to take this medicine, and then it's worth it. All medicines in every treatment, including water, has a side effect. So it's always figuring out what the balance of that is and if it's worth it. So in light of that, the doctors should monitor you. I showed this exact same slide last week. But no matter what, if you have a doctor or you are a doctor, we should be asked about these side effects at every appointment. We should tell our doctor if anything is happening that you're not used to. If your mood is getting out of control or you're feeling suicidal, you need to tell your doctor, because those medicines can help. They can bring you back to feeling more like yourself. And it's really important. So you're worth it. It's worth getting help. And so find that help. Finally, I created this dietary supplement, and it has several ingredients that can help keep a steady mood and help you sleep more restfully at night. I really struggled with sleeplessness when I was on prednisone, and so I created this so that when I have to go back on prednisone, I've got this to fall back on. That not only is it helping me feel calmer and more like myself, but it's also giving back the nutrients that prednisone is stealing in addition to that melatonin. And so I would encourage you to check it out at Nutranize.com. I will talk to you next week, signing out as your prednisone pharmacist, Dr. Megan.